All right, welcome to Eric Tries Too Hard Podcast, episode 147. I'm calling this one Hard Times Deep Cuts. So I haven't done one in a while. I gotta be honest, if you're watching on video, that's my cat Ellie. She's adorable. I had this idea, I had a couple of ideas for podcasts that I set up with some people. We're gonna do a whole new stream, website, RSS, drunk. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I'll do all these podcasts, and then all the planning fell through because everyone fell through. I'm sick also, and that's my other cat. Man, this is starting off bad. I promise this will get interesting. Well, so this is going to be, so I figured, I do at least something. I'm going to podcast in a few months, and I had a few people I wanted to interview. I moved since you last saw me. I've done a lot of shows since you last saw me. I had a lot of cool shit happen since you last saw me. And I'm not going to talk about any of that yet. But I have a lot of people I want to interview, but nobody's kind of came through recently. And that's partially my fault. But it's good. I'm focusing on, like, quote unquote, bigger things. No offense if you're listening to this podcast, but there's like a couple hundred people listen to it or listen to it. I have no idea who's going to actually listen now. Fuck, I should just start over, but I'm not gonna, because it's not how we do things here at Eric Tries Too Hard. Or as literally everyone has commented, Eric, don't try hard enough. We get it. And by the way, please keep commenting, because not you. I mean, I like you. I'll pretend to like you. But because the Facebook algorithms on any kind of interaction help me out all the time. But yeah, so I figured I'd do something. It's better than nothing. I have a couple of things in the works that are more like, high production value, and I think will be, applicable to a wider audience. But this is going to be, even to my group of a couple hundred people who listen to this, still going to be a low % audience. So if you don't care about the hard times or my involvement in it, you just get out of here right now. And that's whatever. I get it. It's cool. You can go. Because what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to go through the articles I've written for the hard times. Not all of them, because there's way too many. Yeah. And I'm going to give little tidbits about where they came from, inspirations, because if you like the hard times, and specifically if you like my stuff, I think it'll be kind of cool. It's like almost like a director's commentary on that. And I've had some articles that did, the articles or not. I've got articles that you probably know that have very interesting stories that I think are interesting to help here. And I'll try to skip over the ones that don't really matter at all. All right. Before I started this, I was like, I should have a drink. That'll be fun. But I've already been drinking. I don't want to keep drinking liquor. And so it's like, I should water liquor down. So maybe I'll take 2 ounces of liquor and pour 10 ounces of water in it. Maybe carbonated water. That'd be good. And I was like, why don't you just get a beer, dumbass? All right. So let's just jump right in with the first article I ever wrote. Well, very quick background before that. I pitched to Hard Times in July 2015, and got rejected. Well, not exactly. The response I got from Hard Tim, which is the email that you sent to, which I think was just from Matt, the founder of Hard Times. He sent me one that said, this one, he copied the first article that made me laugh. To which I replied, oh, should I write it? Am I in? What do I do? And then nothing. No response. So then November 2015, I sent another 10 headlines and another sample article or 2, just can I get in now? To which I believe the reply was something along the lines of, why didn't you just write the first one I liked? All right, fair enough. Anyway, from November 2015 to about, I'm not counting this first article because I kind of forced my way in with that. From November 2015 to sometime in February or even March 2016, I pitched 3 to 5 articles every day and nothing got on. I bombed left and right. Every once in a while, something did well, but it still didn't make the site. It still wasn't good enough, even if it worked in the writer's room. And I was terrified every single week that I'd get kicked off out of the writer's room. Fortunately, they did not. I studied up. I worked on what seemed to work for the site, and then I started doing stand-up, and all of a sudden things on by about March 2016. And from then on, it's been, a year and a half, and it's been pretty whatever it is. I think I just counted as like 56 articles have been on so far of mine, which has far surpassed anything I ever hoped for, and it's just been really cool. Anyway, so I'm going to jump into the first one that I ever had published on the site. It got accepted, got me into the group, and when I looked through the writer's room, apparently it was pitched before I got on. Before I got into the writer's room, it was pitched to see how well it would do, and it bombed. But they still let me put it on the site anyway, and that was Crust Punk gives riveting speech on seeing unity through microphone he stole from house show. Solid concept. Extremely long. I would have cut it down by like 19 words if I wrote it today. The only background behind this one, for anyone who's seen it, am I going to say that for every article? Is that the fun story behind this one, it's just everyone, I grew up with Crust Punks. I grew up in Baltimore in the early 2000s in the punk scene. It's the heroin capital. It was right at the time of leftover crack in New York, and Baltimore was just trying to be New York. Baltimore, by the way, just so anybody who doesn't know Baltimore, the Baltimore punk and hipster scene, everyone in Baltimore in that scene is just trying to be Brooklyn. So when you think of, people think of Baltimore, they think very different things than Brooklyn, but you should really, if you're thinking about punks and hipsters and whatever, just think Brooklyn. That's what you got in Baltimore. Baltimore's trying to be Brooklyn. And so I always thought it was funny. Me and my friends used to talk about it. I was like, all these punks would talk about anti-capitalism and unity and for the people, but then they just steal money from their friends or steal whatever from their friends. So I thought that was a really funny concept. Now, the interesting story behind it is when I wrote this article, I'd never written a Hard Times article before. I'd never had anything exposed really big for me. This thing, whatever, 4,624 shares on just Facebook alone. But it's it was the biggest thing at the time that I'd ever, put out. But when I wrote it, I was still thinking I don't know, like you think when you write your local band CD or you think whatever. So I was like, oh, I get to name all these characters. I'm going to name the main character after two pivotal members of the Baltimore punk scene from when I was growing up. And I named it Chris Loyce. Chris, who's a dude who ended up in a band that I was in, but he was this dude who knew everybody I knew. He played bass, and he was this amazing bass player who played bass in all these punk bands that I loved. And I was like, oh, I want to name Chris. And then Loyce is the last name of another guy named Justin Loyce, who was the singer and guitarist of a band called The Squints, who was the epitome of Baltimore punk when I was coming up. Saw their band a bunch. I met him a few times. Was kind of starstruck. And so anyway, I named the character that, 10 years after I'd ever seen Justin Loyce, and Chris at the time was in my reason I still remember because me and Chris would talk about old school Baltimore punk all the time. So then the day that this comes out, right, I'm so stoked. I got an article on Hard Times. This is so cool. It's representing Baltimore, all this stuff. And I get a message from Justin Loyce on Facebook. And I haven't talked to this guy in 10 years. And he was like, dude, did I ever do a show with you and you had a problem with me? And I was like, no, he thought I was legitimately writing about him, accusing him of stealing shit from a show. And I was like, no, dude, I'm so sorry. That was just an homage. I didn't even think you'd see it. I didn't get the scope and spectrum of the site. I was like, holy shit. Anyway, smooth things over with him. But I felt so bad. I was like, I'm really sorry. I had no idea. And then I saw it got shared on my friend Travis, who owns the Sidebar, which is a legendary Baltimore place. And I saw it got shared on his page. It was this whole thing. And anyway, lesson to anyone out there who's writing music or comedy or what. People see that homages when it's satire and you're making fun of somebody. So sorry, Justin. And sorry, Chris. Not that Chris was offended, because Chris was just stoked as shit to have referenced in the hard times. But anyway, that's the story behind that one. All right, so oh, did I fuck up already? Okay, so the next one. Oh, okay. Realistic Band Files is nonprofit organization. Yeah, another one. Oh, by the way, anytime you see an article of mine and you look at the Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania was the like, they make us make locations. I always pick locations of people I know or bands I like. Actually, that's not interesting. I shouldn't have said that at all. But here's what's kind of interesting. This was the time where, so after that first article, I don't know, I've never confirmed with the people at Hard Times, but there was more skepticism. Like, there was like maybe a week or there was like, use names that are fake names or names you've approved of. And I'm still to this day terrified to even ask them. Like, I wonder if that Justin guy emailed them and was like, fuck you, you used my name, you piece of shit. Anyway, so I got paranoid. And so for the next like 4 or 5 articles, I just asked my music friends. I was like, can I use your names? Do you think that'd be cool? And I got permission for every name. So there's a band called, what are they, Extensions, Excretions, whatever. Dan Shiraki, who has been on this podcast, he is an amazing musician. I've been in a band with him. He's also a great fantasy football analyst. So I named that article of the character after Dan Chach, is what I did, because that's what everybody calls him. That's not interesting. I just wanted to give a shout out to my friend. So anyway, screw that article. There's nothing interesting about that. I should have written all these down, shouldn't I? It's okay. We'll get into some more interesting ones. Okay, so let's skip a couple. Okay, here we go. I had done 3 articles over this course of maybe whatever. I'd been in the art scene. I've been on that page for 6 months in the group pitching articles for 6 months. I'd had 3 on. One of them did well, that first one, and the other 2 didn't do that well. So my 4th article was called Man Hasn't Heard Band, but He's Heard of Them. And that one was the first one I had that blew up. And that was like a huge weight off my shoulders. That was like, before I felt like I don't even deserve to be in this writer's room. I don't deserve to be pitching. I'm worried for my, they might kick me out at any moment. And this one, this blew the doors open. Or not really. I'm joking, exaggerating. Well, not that I wouldn't exaggerate if I was stone sober. It doesn't really make any difference. But it just made me, this weight off my shoulders that was like, I have a hit, or a quote unquote hit, whatever, for the site at the time. Because when I joined the site, it was doing well, but it was, 40,000 hours. They didn't have an instant for timestamping this article. We just surpassed 250,000 Facebook likes, and like 100 and change thousand Instagram followers and Twitter and all Tumblr and all this stuff. It's gotten completely crazy now. Before, I thought I was lucky to join something that had any kind of momentum. Now it's just this runaway freight train that's like, I have no idea how far it could take. Now it's like, before I was like, I want to excel because I love this thing and I want it to do well. And now I'm like, this thing is doing so well, I need to excel to an astounding degree just to keep up with how big this thing is. It's just an incredible site. I'm still, as you can tell, I'm just like a fanboy of this. Like, it's so, I just love it. It was a thing that was like meant for me as a person to consume, and for a lot of you, I assume, to just consume. And the fact that I got to be a part of it is like, I'm gonna cry. Okay, hold on, sorry. Okay, so this article, the story behind this article is in college. Band, and even if you haven't heard of the band, you haven't listened to a band, like, everyone's instinct is kind of just, and that's why I did so well, is because everyone's instinct is like, oh no, but I've heard of them. because you still want to be a part of it, even if you can't place it. And a lot of times when people say that, they actually have heard of them. They're not like full of shit as much. But the joke is, for me, when I was in college, I was sitting with my best friend, Brad, and our mutual friend, Todd. And yeah, fuck you, Todd, mutual friend. Me and Todd basically fight over Brad as a best friend, and Todd hates me. I don't. It's you don't even need to know about this. I just know Brad's gonna watch this eventually, and I think it'll be funny. All right. So we're all sitting together in college, and Todd mentioned some band, and I had heard of them, and I was like, oh, I've heard of them, and he said something along the lines of like, dude, you've heard of a lot of bands, and what I meant to say was, oh, band that people live out. I actively go online and find them and listen to them, and so I've listened to a lot of bands. The words that came out of my mouth were, oh, I listen to every band. And yeah, it's been 13, no, it's been years, Jesus Christ, it's been 10 years, and they have not let me live that down. They have ridiculed me for that forever, and so that's the inspiration for this title. And a quick shout out again with the names, where I had people who allowed me to name things. I named a character. So I named the character Ollie Sweeney. Ollie Pladel is the he runs a site called BabeTalk.tv. It's a great music reviewing site. They run a great podcast. His podcast that I was on for a long period of time taught me a lot about how to do podcasts, especially group podcasts. So I owe Ollie a lot of gratitude. Comedy music podcasting. Thank you, Ollie. Everybody check out BabeTalk.tv. It's an amazing site, and the podcast. And then Sweeney is the last name of Ryan Sweeney, who is another friend of me and Brad's. And he is my ultimate music hipster friend. I love him to death, but God damn it, he is absolutely the person I've written about in this article. And I've written other articles about him and articles mocking his Facebook statuses, which I'll get to later. And yeah, by the way, a lot of my hard style articles are just me taking some douchey Facebook status I saw and just flipping it on its head. Anyway, so I thought that was fun to put that in. And plus it has my favorite name for a fake band that I've ever come up with, which is a folk punk group called the Bindle Brothers. Anyway. All right. So that is, man hasn't heard band, but he's heard of them. That was also before we by we, I mean Matt Sankum, founder of the Hard Times, kind of came up with the, his version of Local Man from The Onion, but which is like Friend, which is like the Hard Times version of it, which I think is genius, which you'll see in a couple. So couple articles later, my next big one, which was Pretentious Friend Only Listens to Podcasts on Vinyl. That was my next one that blew up. And I mean, I've been obsessed with podcasts for a long time, and I still kick myself for not getting into it early. Not because I expect to have done well, but I would have loved to have been doing it for, I mean, I did college radio. I did college radio and high school radio and TV at my high school. And it was just like, why wasn't I doing podcast? Like, it was the perfect thing for me as someone who loved comedy and music and talk radio. And anyway, so I got to, what I did throughout this was I just basically had, pretentious people talking about, like hipsters talking about how they do, what's it called? Podcasting. So I made references to some of the more popular podcasts, like Bill Burr's podcast, Mark Maron, Joe Rogan, Nerdist, all that stuff. I think somebody from, was it? I'm going to feel an asshole if I don't remember it. Sorry, somebody from a smaller podcast retweeted it, and then Joe Rogan retweeted their retweet of it, which was really cool. And I guess the more interesting story from that one is, hey, sweetie. The more interesting story from that one is that recently there's a site called Above Average, which is, I guess, I think it's Lorne Michaels' satire site, or it's, I don't know, and owned by Viacom. I don't know what the deal is with that. But either way, they had a very similar article title. Which, in all honesty, I believe was just parallel thinking. It came out a year after mine, and each paragraph in it was kind of like the same paragraphs that I sweetie. Oh, if you're watching on video, this is Ellie. She's adorable. All right. But honestly, like what it made me realize, and I'm gonna be a douche for saying, it made me mad. People thought, because people kept tagging me in posts about this, like, oh, they ripped you off, they did this, and you think it'd make me mad because it would be like a ripoff, but what made me mad was when I read it, I was like, oh man, my jokes must be so hacky if somebody else could have just come up with it like that. And when I reread mine, and this happens a lot when you reread stuff you've done from years ago, especially me with Hard Times, because that was what got me into comedy. I've only been in this game for like 2 years. I'm extremely friggin' lucky. Friggin'? What's wrong with me? Anyway, I'm extremely lucky to have had the levels of people looking at the stuff that I've done, like just the sheer numbers in that short amount of time. But anyway, looking back on it, I still look at it like, ugh, I wrote that? Like, I could have done so much. Like, I would love to rewrite that right now. Because I know they reshare those articles. Like, maybe I should, like, hit the managers up at Hard Times and be like, hey, can I rewrite my first, like, 40 articles? I thought that was an interesting story. And by the way, I want to give credit to a couple of things, like for Man That Hasn't Heard Band, but he's heard of them. When I pitched that, it was extremely popular in the writer's room, but there was a lot of doubt in the managerial staff of how is this going to be an actual article? And they had a good point. And it almost, like, the suggestion somebody made was like, oh, why don't you just tweet it? Like, make it like a tweet, because one joke, tweet, whatever. And at that point, I had 3 articles, and one did pretty well, and the other 2 didn't do that well. So I was kind of sticking my neck out because I really believed in that, and I was like, no, this is a thing. It can be a thing. I promise. And I wrote like 3 paragraphs on why it could be a thing. But it didn't have legs until I believe it was Matt Sankum, founder of the Hard Times, who I believe his idea, and this came through Bill Conway, the head writer of the Hard Times, that was his whole life. Experienced anything, but he'd heard, of it. He had a general idea of how things worked in life. And so me and Bill brainstormed through that idea. And so I wrote a few paragraphs on that. And then the big kicker for me that I came up with was, oh, why don't I make this guy, it's also he's a sociopath. That's why he doesn't have any kind of experience in relational feelings. And the last couple of paragraphs are about how the guy's a sociopath. And then Bill punched up a whole bunch. And so that was a process of Matt and Bill from the Hard Times based on my idea. And then it ended up coming out something really good. And it was really cool to see how that process worked. And through Bill and Matt and Ed Sankum, also from the Hard Times, he runs Hardstyle, really taught me a lot about how to write these articles. And through that early work with them, I think that's what spurred the rapid fire pace of article. I went from being probably one of the worst pitchers to being in the because of a lot what they taught me. Anyway, so the next big one that I had was a cappella punk group, just 4 guys yelling at each other. And that did, which has, I don't think there's anything interesting about that. Sorry. All right. Like I said, I'm sick and I'm drunk, and I'm sick and drunk. All right, let's go a couple articles later. All right, here's one. Evil mastermind making his way through crowd doesn't actually have a friend up there. So that one, obviously, so I was at a Real Big Fish and Less Than Jake co-headlining tour at, I said it in Silver Spring, Maryland, but we saw it in Baltimore, Maryland at the Baltimore Soundstage. However, I was writing it kind of about some experience I'd had at a place called the Fillmore in Silver Spring, Maryland. But it was based on me and my one of my good friends, Pat. We had just reconnected. He had just come back from serving over in Iraq, and sorry, well, yeah, you get the fucking point. But he came back, and it was one of the first time we hung out, and we were having a great time at Soundstage and seeing two of our favorite bands, and it was just a great night. And right in the middle of it, like a group of people just like cut in front of us and like made their way up, and we spent like the next 10 minutes just riffing on making fun of these guys, and just how because it was so ridiculous how all the people try to sneak their way to the front of the crowd, but it's so obvious that they're just drunk assholes trying to sneak up there, but they still feel this weird social need to like justify their behavior as if they're fooling anyone, like, oh, friends are up there. I was like, man, your friend's up there? God, it must suck being him and having such shitty douchebag friends. And me and Pat even, I wish I'd remembered more of this, but we started to write an entire like just joke, beat by beat movie script about like one of those coming of age tales about everyone, instead of like, you know, like Detroit Rock City is a movie where they all just try to get to the concert or whatever. But douchebags trying to get to the front row of the concert, and that was their coming of age tale. It was like an anti-hero coming of age tale. Anyway, so I wrote the article, and I think one thing that was really cool about it was, so I write this thing, and I put it in Silver Spring, Maryland, because I'd seen it happen so much at the Fillmore. And whoever did the art for it, you know what, I can find it. Whoever did the picture for it, they obviously posed it because they had a guy who looked just like how I described it, sneaking up to the front row. Well, that article actually did better than I expected. Matt Klein at Abstract Cartoonism on Twitter. I'm going to follow this guy. Sorry, this page isn't available. Well, I couldn't find him on Facebook, and now I can't find him on Twitter, but whatever. Well, Matt Klein, if you're somehow listening, I personally believe that a lot of people in the comment section of the Facebook post of this, I think he shot it at the Fillmore in Silver Spring. I think it was a pure coincidence that whoever they assigned that headline to, before I even put it at Silver Spring, I think whoever came up with that photo idea just happened to be from the DC Silver Spring area and shot it at Fillmore. And that was based on where I was describing, including, because I even think I had a paragraph, about the I-95 expressway leaving, like the kicker, which is the ending. At press time, Banks, the main character, was spotted speeding down a merge-only lane on the I-95 expressway. Quote, "All these people are suckers," Banks yelled. "Why is no one letting me in? I have a kid I need to get home to." So basically, you know, those douchebags who cut in on the exit-only lanes are exactly like the people who think they're stealthy sneaking into the front row of shows. Like, whatever. But it all lined up. And the dude, I think, shot it at Fillmore, or at least a place that looked just like Fillmore. And to that's just an insane, like, serendipitous moment. All right, sweet. So let's go to a couple. Oh, okay. Hardstyle article. Oh, no, it was the Hard Times opinion pages, which I don't know if it was a prelude to Hardstyle or if it's just a coincidence, but this would have been, if Hardstyle existed when I wrote this, this would have been Hardstyle. Opinion. Our band is sick of passive-aggressive drama, unlike some bands in this scene. So this one, I mean, I'd seen my fair share of passive-aggressive bands who posted on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, accusing every other band of being full of drama and passive-aggressive. But the reason I wanted to bring this up was I had a joke in here about how, I don't even quote it, but a joke in here about a band accusing another band of ripping them off and plagiarizing them because they covered the same song that that band covered. That seems like a really ridiculous, over-the-top joke in the article. That is something that happened in my local scene. A band went on a social media band Plagiarism covered the same song that was a radio hit 10 years prior and was just a famous song that everybody covered. That shit happens. Yeah, anyway, insane. All right, so another one I want to talk about very briefly, just the cover of it. But this one, oh, wow, it actually did really. All right, now I'm a douchebag. When this article came out, it did okay. It did average. When I started, for the most part, it's like if a Hard Times article gets like, our metric is Facebook shares on the site that you can see. Obviously, there are other metrics, but like if you don't see them, you don't know, and they don't always post all the metrics all the time. But anyway, the metric that everybody sees, I was stalling so I could kill a bug for my cat. The metrics that everybody sees on the site is Facebook shares, and so that's all. As a writer, that's all you really have to go by until you see any advanced metrics, which you might not even see. Sounds like a criticism. I promise. What I understand, most sites, as an author, you have no clue what the metrics are. You don't know how you're doing. Hard Times is abundantly transparent with how well you're doing, but obviously they can't message every single writer after every single article and tell them how they did periodically, you know. But anyway, this one did okay. So you want, like, from what I've gathered, if you get 3,000 Facebook shares, you're done about average. If you get less, then it's like, I wish I did better. If you get about 5,000, you're like, hey, a little above average. And now that the site's bigger, 5,000 is like almost the average. So 3 to 5 is like the average. If you break 10, you're like, fuck yes. So this one I had, band caught taking performance enhancing lessons. I was like, this is my next big blah, blah, blah. Like it's whatever. And it got like 4,000. And I'm like, okay. But looking at it now, maybe it's been reposted probably at least once. It's got about 18,000 or a little over 18,000. So now I'm pretty happy with it, obviously. But anyway, I love that article. And the picture. So this picture, you see this one, Hard Times page, band caught taking performance dancing lessons. It's shot, it's me and my dad. It's shot in his studio. And it's him showing me how to do a chord, which is a very real thing that happened because he told me, oh, I was like, yeah, just tell me to do a chord and then point at it while I'm doing it. And either my house is broken into, my wife's coming down and not telling me because I'm being loud as shit, or my cat's just being a cat. Ellie, get the shit out of here. All right. Anyway, so did you all just find out that I'm terrified of my wife or burglars? All right. Anyway, I am really terrified. Am I gonna murder on live stream, Robbie? My old neighborhood, for long-time listeners of this podcast, you know this. My old neighborhood, my old neighbors were drug dealers, and so I legit, like, would hear noises and be like, "Am I gonna die?" All right. Cheers to Google. Anyway, so this picture, it's me and my dad, and he was telling me, he's like, "Oh, do this chord," and I was like, "Tell me to do a chord. I'll do it. You point at it, and that's it." So he tells me to do the chord, and I was like, what? He's like, dude, this is like a basic chord. I'm such an idiot. He just said, like, do a something seventh, and I just did, like, a power chord. And he was like, no, you dipshit. He didn't go into it. He's a very good dad. And then when he told me how to do it, I started doing it, and he was like, no, it's wrong. And so he's literally, if you look at this picture, he's literally, this is live. My mom is standing up taking these pictures from an angle so they could Photoshop it to make it look like security camera. And he's doing it, and he's taking my fingers and putting them on the strings. Because even at 30 years old, when I took this picture, he's still my daddy. All right, anyway, that's that one. I was going to complain so much about how that one didn't doing well. Hello, I'm a little bitch. Next to a street punk band tactfully inquires about straight edge band string tickets. That was the first sponsored one I ever got across. And that's something that's interesting about sponsored posts versus, and I mean, they're all very open about what's sponsored. They advertise what they're sponsoring right there. Like that's never an issue, but like suits, like that was the thing with sponsored ones. I never did particularly well with sponsored ones. I still don't, because something I think I'm really good at is I'm good at coming up with unique ideas for things. That's why I work great in a writer's room, is that I come up with a lot of ideas that get harnessed and honed in by me and a bunch of other writers. I'm just realizing I like shave my eyebrows a little bit because I was growing a unibrow and now they're a little off center. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Sorry. Great for an audio podcast, dipshit. This is just a secret ploy to track everyone, so I have more than 40 subscribers on YouTube. Anyway, but the thing is, when there's a sponsored post, it's harder for me because when you have 200, 300, 400 people who are like, hey, everyone, write an article about this, already has the idea, somebody else is probably going to come up with the best take. Like, I'm well aware of that. But the fact that I consistently come up with unique ideas that other people don't have is what makes me feel really good about it. I mean, my end goal, like, the fact that stand-up comedy, like, so I've been doing a lot of stand-up. Things have been going ridiculously well, and I've had almost every weekend since, like, now it's almost November. I've had almost every weekend since July doing, like, paid gigs, a lot out of state and a lot, like, you know, just try, like, weekends and clubs and bars and stuff. It's been really awesome. But my end goal is to be a TV writer. And so, like, the fact that I have so many of these ideas, now I'm just pitching myself. I'm a stupid fucking asshole. I'm sorry. Okay, the reason I bring up this one, screw it, who cares? I was proud that I got it on, but also because head writer of the Hard Times, Bill Conway, is the straight edge guy in the picture of this article. And or Ed, the founders of Hard Times, those are, like, anytime you get any of them involved in the article at all, it's like, it's whether it's picture editing or just that they liked it, is just one of my favorites. And plus, with that article for the straight edge band name, I didn't come up with this name. They reused it from a previous article, but the band was called Clearly Straight. It's my favorite straight edge hardcore band name ever. All right, anyway. Okay, so my first hard style article. The term skanking is problematic, and that's not even one of the top 5 reasons ska is dead. That one did, I'm sure plenty of Hard Times articles have eclipsed it long since. Excuse me. But that was my, like, with the Hard Times, I had 3 quote-unquote hit articles at that point, but they didn't, like, the top 25 Hard Times articles as far as views. This was my first time I got into a big list, which was, this was one of the top 25 hard style articles early on. Out since, but it's like, it did really well. But I was really proud. This is like my first list article. And I, for anyone who knows me and knows this podcast, probably knows that I submitted a lot to Cracked long before I did Hard Times, long before I did stand-up. And my failures there made me kind of just not bother doing comedy. And so to get a list article on a popular site and have the article do well was a really good feeling for me. And all the concepts for this article were, you know, funny, whatever. But my favorite was just the most ridiculous one. It was number 4. It was, and this is another reason ska is dead, is checkered flag shirts attract race cars. The number of race car-related deaths in the ska community increases every year as race cars' natural food supplies dries up and they leave the comfort of their tracks seeking fresh, yet more dangerous prey. That is probably the greatest thing I've ever written in my entire life, and I don't think it's ever going to get better. All right, next one. Plagiarism is no laughing movie reference. That's meaningful to me. Is there's a guy named Jared Alonge who is a YouTube comedian who kind of inspired me for a lot of, like, before Hard Times, he put out a couple videos. The one that meant the most to me was the, it's like things every pop punk singer says, or whatever it was called. And since then, he's put out parody albums of multiple styles of music. I mean, he's, in my opinion, one of the funniest, if not the funniest, alternative music comedian I've ever seen. Like, I think he's incredible in a lot of ways, and I really respect what he does. He made a parody shirt of a band that was named after a movie reference, who then like attacked him for it. So I made that art for plagiarism. So I made that article pointing out the hypocrisy of it. Now, the reason I put this out, one, is because, hey, Jared, come on my podcast. And two, because for me realizing what Hard Times was, in that, this comparison, I know is not fair, accurate, whatever, but in this one way, it feels similar. South Park, don't kill me for trying to compare Hard Times to the greatest comedy duo in the history of, probably in the history of the world, when we really look back on it, for what Matt and Dre have done. Even though I think it is, but not because of me, but because of other people. But here's the thing, though. In this article, I made fun of a band and supported this YouTube guy who was getting attacked. The YouTube guy reposted it, and all his fans loved it. The band I made fun of also reposted it in a sense of, hey, we are in on the joke, we get it, you're right. And the fact that like that happened, that reminded me of when South Park did an episode making fun of Kanye West and Carlos Mencia, both in extremely critical and mean. And Carlos Mencia took to Twitter that night to say, hey, South Park, you got me. My bad. It was one of those moments where everyone you're making fun of, everyone in the story supports you, even if they're on the end of the joke. And when I realized that that taught me about Hard Times, I was like, oh my God, like, as long as we're in the right, we have that kind of support where people naturally want to like it, because it's built up so much credibility with it being funny, smart, and accurate. And I think that was a big tenement to the Hard Times. Next one, quick story about this one. Shirtless man near stage absorbed into hardcore band. I want to give a shout out to my old bandmate, Connor Moran, who one night texted me real drunk. I get a lot of friends who, and every Hard Times writer gets this, people who are like, you got to write an article about this, and 99.9% of the time, it's terrible. And it's not the and no, oh, I've seen that pitched 100 times. Like you're right, it's funny, but it's either not broad enough, not specific enough, or it's been done so many times. But you're right, it's still funny. Like, a lot of these pitches are very funny, but they just wouldn't work for one of a million reasons outside of that. This is the first time I ever got a pitch where I was like, oh, that actually kind of works, and it turned out to work. So this one, my friend Connor at I put it in Baltimore too, because for him. And has my other favorite fake band name that I did come up with, Punching Down. Hardcore band called Punching Down. I fucking love it. Anyway. Oh, and the main character guy is Connor Gilbert. So Connor, a fan, yeah. So Connor Moran, he told me, he was like, I was at this show. This hardcore band came, I don't know if it was a hardcore band, it was just some heavy, maybe a metal band or whatever, came up and was playing, and it was all instrumental. And he was like, there's this going nuts. And after the first song, he jumps on stage, grabs a mic, and starts singing with them. And he was like, I was so drunk that it took me a couple songs to realize, oh, he's in the band. And so, of course, I turned that into just a guy who showed up and then accidentally got absorbed into the band. But so thank you, Connor. That was great. All right, so let's look at the next page. Skip probably a bunch. I think we're probably running pretty long as it is. How long has this been? That's the one thing. Who cares? I'm not going to criticize the medium. All right. Oh, here's another Hard Times one, or Hard Style one that did really well. Help, my anti-swastika tattoo is just a swastika till I can afford another session. So that was a combination of two things in my life. One, I was with my parents at it wasn't Target. Oh, it was Caldor. I don't know if anybody had Caldors growing up. I think they're out of business. And a punk. And it was like, yeah, anti-racist. I mean, I was always pro-racism. But it was like, I want to show my anti-racism, anti-sexism. And I saw they had one of those swastika shirts with a circle around it and the line through the swastika. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I want to get this. And my parents were like, yeah, but from like 20 feet away, that looks like you're just wearing a swastika. And I was like, fair point. That's not a risk I want to take. I'm sure at the time I was like, thank you, Mom and Dad. But yeah, buy me stuff. I'm an anarchist. I hate capitalism. Can you buy me stuff with your money? But like, so anyway, so there was that. And I always kind of kept that in the back of my mind, even though I never admitted it to them. Good point, Mom and Dad. And that's the thing. You grew up and your parents were like anti-establishment hippies when they were kids. And you grew up and you think you're rebellious because you're a fucking 16-year-old punk rocker. Oh, man. Anyway, so there was that. Plus, I have so many punk friends who they work, you know, I mean, this is pretty common. They work these minimum wage jobs, these shitty jobs, and then they still live with their parents. And it's not a criticism of, I mean, it's just, but there's like getting out of the town, getting out of this, but they spend they don't ever save any money. They spend it all on cigarettes and tattoos. And it was just growing up, it was every week I'd see my friends were like, yeah, check out the new additions I got to this tattoo and this one. I'm going to get this one in 6 months and whatever. And so I combined those two ideas into that. And I think that's what made it do so well, because it had both. And that's a lot of these Hard Times articles that do particularly well, like beyond just like the average, that end up like really spreading pretty well. Like this one, 34,500 Facebook shares. They're like, I don't know, they're the ones that really speak on multiple fronts. It's like the ones that are just a joke. The joke being, there's two sides. There's like, and there's ones that are, hey, you made a good point or an observation that we all relate to. But it isn't until both of them, it's like you need to have two great headlines in one, in my opinion, to make something really work. For not just this, like for any joke that really spreads, anything that goes viral. It has to be relatable or a good observation plus a great joke. And that's what I think made this one do well, where it was the observation of like every punk seems to be, I'm going to get this part of this tattoo and then part of it later, combined with the joke of like, hey, it's a swastika. It's supposed to be anti-swastika, but I couldn't afford it yet. And it's, yeah, that flaw in the logic. Which actually is believable in some cases. I feel like everyone knows a guy who might do that. It's similar to, I forget which SNL writer said this, probably Jim Downey, but I don't remember who. In regards to like telling somebody how to write on SNL, like those, you know, they have the parody advertisements. The quote was, if you're going to write those, it has to be fictional problem, impractical solution. That's the way to write a good one of those. And I think that applies to this. Also, writing this made me feel really good about the hard time or the hard style voice, because in those it's like you're writing from the point of view of someone. You have to fully bury yourself in the character for any kind of like first person satire. But like you don't want to be too tongue-in-cheek with it. That's the other thing. Like if you're too tongue-in-cheek and it's like, oh, then it takes you out of the character. But in the middle of writing about like this guy being like, please give me money, I need to do this, and like it's not my fault. I just put a like right in the middle, just ... I'm such a fucking idiot. Like the guy has a quick moment of self-action, like realization, and able to identify like anything about himself, which I always love. That's why if anybody who watched a good example is if you watch The League, the character Rafi is amazing. The guy's no self-awareness, and then the ultimate self-awareness in one moment, and then back to no self-awareness. Like there's a scene where he's at a party and he's just being a douchebag and everybody hates him and everyone's like, just get the fuck out of here. We don't want you to be here. And he's talking about like being the designated driver, and because that's why he's at the party, because everyone's using him to be a DD. And then he's like, they're watching him get hammered and they're like, hey, shouldn't you slow down? Like you're supposed to drive us. And he goes, oh, it'll be fine. Like I'll go, tell me 10 minutes before we leave. I'll take a crap. I'll have a mint. I'll be good to go. And one guy asked him, was like, does it actually work? And he goes, maybe. And it's like, he knows he's full of shit, but you wouldn't believe. Anyway, I think that's a really solid blah, blah, blah. Excuse me. So this is my stint where I had like, I think my next 6 articles were all hard style articles. So a couple articles later, I had probably my biggest one to this point. If I'm such a racist, it's only been posted once on the site. It's at 42,000 Facebook shares, and I think Tumblr had between 40 and 50,000 notes on it, which was crazy. And this is one where is this before the Amy Schumer one or after? Sorry, I'm going back to look. It is. Oh, shit, sorry. I think it's before. Holy shit, they might not have had my name on the Amy Schumer one. Wait, really? I think this is after Amy Schumer. All right, sorry. If I fuck this up for 30 seconds, I mean, if you're listening at this point, you're okay with it. Hard Times, Amy Schumer. Oh, there it is. Okay. No, my name's on it. Why isn't it in the all right, whatever. So the Amy Schumer. Okay, so let me back up. I had like 7 hard style articles in a row, and one of them was sexist. She's rich. That one did pretty well, but what it did really well at is getting me sent threats. I had a lot of people calling me sexist because they didn't get that the joke was, hey, I'm making fun of people who are sexist but think they're not sexist. I had a lot of people getting mad at me because they said, basically saying I wasn't sexist enough. I don't give a shit what they think. And then the majority of people were just offended because I said she was funny. That was the primary comment that I received on that. Anyway, after I wrote that one, after that one came out, I had already written the one, if I'm so racist, how come I have so many prepared responses to deny it? And so when I wrote that one, sorry, now I gotta look this up. Whatever, you guys have been very patient anyway for me. Okay, so when I wrote that one, it was like this. That's weird. It didn't show up in the last search, but it showed up now. Who cares? Maybe it's just fucking with me. But anyway, yeah. So then I actually got a little nervous for the If I'm So Racist one, because I was like, I even made up like a fake name. I made a fake Twitter handle, and I emailed Ed, Ed Sankum, who runs Hardstyle. I was like, dude, I'm a little nervous about putting this one out. And he said, yeah, if you want to put it out under a pen name or whatever, you can. And that was cool of him. But I ended up not, and I'm glad I didn't, because this one ended up being my biggest article to date. And that one people got. People really understood, oh, okay. And there were plenty of people who were like, the racist apologists who were like, dude, it's fucked up, it's blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's not racist, you're just that. They basically, like, it was a classic case of, I made up a fake person who I identified as racist. And people defended that fake person, saying they weren't racist. And it's like I get what you're saying if you're doubting like my writing style and my, but that's not what they were doing. They were just saying, I bet that real person who's fake isn't racist because of X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z were things that had nothing to do with what I was talking about. It was literally a straw man you can call me out for making a straw man, but the joke was that this character I'm making fun of is a straw man. It's not supposed to represent anybody else but this dumbass character I'm writing. And it's kind of like Family Guy had the third season, they had an article that was kind of like, they had an episode that was kind of anti-Semitic. I mean, it was intentionally anti-Semitic, but the premise was Peter wants to become Jewish for like the wrong reasons. The wrong reasons being all the reasons anti-Semitic people are like, oh, Jews control this and that. Peter was like, I want to control this and that. I want to be a part of this, so I'll just join this, and then all the good things will come to me. All the good stereotypes will happen to me if I convert. And then the network pulled it. It ended up getting released on DVD and later when they syndicated to Adult Swim, but it got pulled. And there's a direct with Scott McFarlane, and he was I'm surprised I didn't get struck by lightning for forgetting that guy's name. Seth MacFarlane, where he said it was before Family Guy came back, by the way. So this is him on the DVD at the time, pre-American Dad, pre all that stuff, where this guy was just like, who knows what'll be of his career? Because people forget, Family Guy was off the air for like 4 years. And Seth MacFarlane hadn't had a show on in a couple years. I'm sure he would have done fine. But at the same time, it's like, he didn't expect to be the next gigantic like producer, like a showrunner, creator. So at the time, he was just kind of venting his frustration. And he was like, how can you say that they're putting like the anti-Semitic Peter in a good light? Like, how are you saying that would inspire anti-Semitism? He was like, we spent 3 years painting him to be the dumbest person on the planet. Of course he's going to say dumb stuff about Jewish people. He's like, there was an episode before that one where he literally says, the day before yesterday, well, that's today. It's like, you paint someone as that dumb when they say something offensive. You're supposed to realize that's a dumb thing. You're not agreeing with that. Anyway, fortunately, there are plenty of people who felt that way, but fortunately, a lot of people agree with that and got the joke. All right, let's fast forward. Oh, here's a pretty fun one. I didn't write this headline. I just wrote the article. I've had a couple of them where I think I've had 3 articles now. I think 1 or 2 still haven't come out yet, where I've been fortunate enough where there's a headline pitched where, and I know this is the same for a lot of other websites, but Hard Times is very good about, you write the headline, it gets accepted, you get to write the article. But there are some people who are just like, I don't have time to write the article, I'm not going to write the article, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure plenty of other people on the Hard Times staff have these articles, and one of them was called Pretty Sweet. I just added the phrase, let's unpack that, to my vocabulary. And I've gotten pretty good at writing the voice of the liberal, progressive, woke guy who's actually not liberal, progressive, and woke, because that was probably me at 18, where I thought I knew everything about social progressivism, but I was completely ignorant because I had no real life experience with it. So I wrote this whole thing, and I wrote a character named, I think it was Spencer was the name of the character that was writing it, like this kind of like douchebag guy, Spencer. And then okay, I'm not going to say anything that will reveal who this is, but there is a certain person who I don't know personally, but he's like a public figure, so I felt this was okay. Who is this guy in real life? So after I wrote the whole article, it was all done, and I was like, oh, beautiful. Before I sent it in for editing, I was like, there's a guy, there's this personality who is basically exactly what I'm making fun of. And the person's first name, and this won't give the person away, I promise. He's not super famous or anything. His first name is Seth. So I just changed the guy's first name to Seth. And every time I read it, I picture the guy's voice, I picture the guy's face, and I know exactly who it is. And it is this person, like in real life. And so that was a little tidbit. There's a handful of people who's going to get exactly that reference, but most people won't. So I'll leave it at that. Sorry, that was this whole episode is a 5%er, meaning only 5% of the people. You know what that means is going to get. That is a 5%er on the 5%ers. All right, let's get to the big one. All Warped Tour stages moved 100 feet from audience to comply with sex offender laws. Okay. So this is by far not even goddamn close. The biggest thing I've ever written on Hard Times, probably period. I know that my Reddit stand-up shot Magic the Gathering thing has probably accumulated. I know views on him, and who knows where it went on Facebook. But this one, this Warped Tour article is probably my most notorious because people remember this shit. All right, anyway, here's the story with this one. This came out June 15th, 2017. I pitched it, I want to say June 2016. It came out 2017. Pitched it like a year before it came out. And when I pitched it, it was right after all the Front Porch Step stuff came out. So he got kicked off tour or whatever, and then he got to play a few acoustic dates. And this was my response to him being allowed to play on the tour. And, you know, there's 700 other bands that were accused of the same thing. So anyway, but by the way, I don't want to come off as some kind of like martyr and person trying to make a point. I thought it was a funny joke of how ridiculous it would be of instead of kicking all these bands off the tour to just move the stage 100 feet back. I thought that was funny. If I didn't think it was funny, I probably wouldn't have pitched it because I don't pitch stuff that's like just trying to make people. And if people also, then I would probably do a lot better. But anyway, so I pitched it, and the response was like people liked it, but it was kind of like, yeah, is this really necessary? Like, is this a little over the top? This is kind of like, this is a shot fired. Is this something that we like really want to put all of our, you know, it's Matt, I don't know if he said it about this article, but Matt Sankum has used the quote from The Wire, which I love, of the Omar quote, if you come at the king, you best not miss. And I don't think he used it for this one. I don't know. I don't remember. But it definitely applies. There are some kings in this business. Warped Tour is one of those kings. If you come at the king, if you shoot at the king, you best not miss. And so it was like, let's lay back on this one. About 6 months later, I got a message from Hard Times saying, hey, because more stuff had come out, hey, maybe this next Warped Tour is going to be the. Wrote it January of 2017. So I pitched it like June, July, or whatever, July, August 2016. Wrote it January 2017. And it came out on June 15th, 2017. I was in the process of moving from one house to another that day. I came home. I remember it had gotten posted right when I like was I like woke up, checked Facebook, it had been posted. I was like, oh cool, it got posted because it was like the day before Warped Tour. I went and took a shower. I came out 15 minutes later. I look at it. It had already been shared 25,000 times. And I was like, this is it. Because I'd seen maybe 3 or 4 Hard Times articles shared like that. And the big thing for me up until this point was I felt like I'd solidified my spot at the Hard Times as a contributor, but I had not had what a lot of these other really great contributors had. And I was like, this is it. Fresh a few minutes later, apparently it had caused so much traffic, it caused the servers to shut down, which made the site go down for 3 hours, which feels awesome, but it kind of sucked for the site and for me, knowing that this link was just getting shared. It was a dead link. In the next 3 hours, it had been shared, I think, about 10,000 more times, even though it was a dead link. And I hadn't patched shit. I was just stressing about this fucking article. It went back up, and you know, within 48 hours, it had been shared almost 100,000 times on Facebook. And you know, had been shared, I mean, other social media stuff, whatever. And the best part of that was, not the best, whatever, but the guy who runs Warped Tour, I checked his replies on Twitter, and he had basically just had to field questions all day long. And it wasn't people who were like, how dare you have sex offenders on it. He just really got under feet, and he was like, no, idiot, that's a fake article. You know? I actually felt bad a little bit because some people, that was one of the first one I ever had that, maybe not because I had a couple others, but this is the first one where a lot of people really thought it was real. And that's something I've heard from a lot of Hard Times people who have had articles like really blow up where they go, oh yeah, it gets to a point where the Hard Times people like it, then comedy fans like it, but then it taps into the national public and it gets to people who don't know it's a joke. Like any article we've had about like vaccines or I don't know, I'm trying to think of other topics. So the two big ones about vaccines that we had that tap into a much bigger cultural argument, there's a lot of people who just think it's real. And I saw a few comments of people saying things like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm not letting my kids go to Warped Tour this year. And that made me feel horrible. If I was 16 and my parents said, you can't go to Warped Tour, damn mine. And I felt kind of bad about that. So hope nobody didn't get to go to Warped Tour because of that. But anyway, but one thing that in the comments that made me feel better about it was I kept seeing comments like, oh, this article must be about, I know this article, it's about blood on the dance floor. And someone's like, no, it's about Front Porch Step. No, it's about Neck Deep. No, it's about, I don't know, pick a band. There were like 11 bands who this was people thought it was about. And I was like, well, at least I'm right. Like, at least what I said is accurate. But yeah, and Kevin Lyman, the guy from Warped Tour, noticed I like scaredly didn't say his name before. The next day he did mention, he's like, I get the joke. He tweeted at us and he was like, I get the joke. Like, you guys are doing good work, whatever. And the nice thing was I went to Warped Tour that year, and thank you, War on Women, who shared it on Instagram. That was awesome. And Sue, their bassist, who gave me a backstage pass. Thank you so very much. Made bands of all time like Anti-Flag and Big D and the Kids Table. It was such a cool experience. Anyway, but it was so cool. Like, just like, I don't know. Well, when I was there, I had a few people at one of their tents that was about like harassment and assault. I had one person in particular who, I'm not going to say anything that might even possibly mention their name. That's, you know, fucked up. But the thing was, they told me that they had personal experience with one of these bands, and that not my article, but other articles that we had written specifically about those bands made this person feel at least a little bit better about the shitty position and situation that they were in. And it was just a cool moment of like, we try to make people laugh, but the fact, God, I feel like such a fucking douchebag. But like, we try to make people laugh, but at the same time, it's like, when you actually positively impact somebody's life on a real level, you're just like, and it wasn't me, it was somebody else's article, but it was just like so fucking cool. Where it was like, we're not trying to do good. I mean, we're trying not to. Yeah, just having somebody take some solace and in a small amount help get over a serious traumatic issue through the humor that we made was like, I mean, just knowing that firsthand was like, yeah. All right, that was a fake cry to cover up a potential real cry. I'm going to drink more and keep talking. If you're still with me, thanks for sticking around. Shit, did I just do my big hit song in the middle of the fucking set? All right, let's see if there's oh, here's a quick one just for maybe one or two people who might have seen this on Facebook. I legitimately just took this from somebody else on Facebook and made fun of them. Somebody put a post up that said, local bands today suck. Like, just because the crowd's bad doesn't mean you shouldn't play bad. I rock out my hardest whether I'm playing in front of 5 people or 5,000 people. And this was someone in a band who's never played in front of 5,000 people. They've maybe played in front of like 15 people. And so I wrote, I rock out my hardest whether I'm playing in front of 5 people or 6. Yeah, so I was proud of that. God, I love Hardstyle. I love that voice. And I got to give a shout out to a site we ran through the hard times called Truth Bang, run by now the guys who run Mike Amory and Jeremy Kaplitz. They ran the site called Truth Bang. Now they write Hard Drive, the video game vertical or the video game section from our what's it called, Hard Times, which I've written I think 2, maybe 3 articles for. And but they're really great, and they wrote Truth Bang, which was a it was basically like what we were trying to do to Alex Jones, what Stephen Colbert did to Bill O'Reilly. And so, but it was, I mean, it's impossible to top Alex Jones, but we had so much fun with that site, and it was so unmarketable because of the horrible shit. And I wrote like 6 or 7 articles for it. It was insane. My last one that never got published, just because the site went down beforehand, was something along the lines of like, I don't know, something about like, I don't respect my adopted father because he's clearly a cuck or something. Like, that's the kind of shit that was on it. The site was amazing. It was really, really great. And you got to, but the thing that it taught me that helped me with Hardstyle was writing in a character that is not you, and really letting go of all of yourself. And I would write these articles at, like, I wouldn't even write jokes in these articles. I would just write it from the perspective. I would really get myself in the headspace of like, of a conspiracy theorist, like ultra right winger. And so doing that allowed me, when I went into Hardstyle, to just go, oh, I can escape from my own perception and go into this character. And it's really helped me. Like, that's helped me with writing. And I would recommend for any writers out there who are just starting out or whatever, like me just starting out, like, just write characters that are not you and really get where they're coming from. Even if you completely disagree, just get where they're coming from. And that helped a lot with these ones. So here's another fun one. Puta must mean ally in Spanish because Mexican dudes keep calling me that. Oh, wow, that one did pretty well. Anyway, yeah, that's another one. I mean, that was one that I just liked. Sorry. Now the wheels are falling off. Where else we got? My voice is running out. Oh, here's a good one. See, that's the problem, is like, I'm trying to make sure some of the articles that didn't do particularly well have good stories behind them. Some that did really well don't really have much stories behind them. I'm just trying to dive into each one as I see them. Here's one that didn't do that well, but came from a great place. No bad ideas policy rescinded at meeting to name band. That is one that came from, and I kind of incorporated in, but I'm just going to tell the story behind it. I was in a band called the Old Line Regulars. Oh, terrible name. And we were having a meeting. We had been together for like 6 months before we played a show, maybe 7 or 8 months before we played a show. And we needed a name before the show. And everybody had that same douchebag thing of like, well, we got to have a name before the show because once we play the show, the name has got to stick because we're going to be so big once we play our first show in front of fucking nobody. And so there was one time we had this like all day long. All we had to do, we showed up at our drummer's house where we practiced. We had a practice, and we spent the rest of the day just coming up with a band name. That was all we had to do all day, and we spent all week like thinking about it. So we had been arguing for like an hour or two, and we couldn't come up with one. We had all these names. And so me and one of the other guys in the band went to go pick up pizza. We came back like 45 minutes later. Our drummer is on the couch with this shit-eating grin on his face. And not like a troll grin, like a I'm full of good ideas grin. Our rhythm guitarist has his head buried in his hands, and our singer is just staring off into space like he couldn't believe what was happening. Like he had just heard tragic news. And we walked in and we're like, what's going on? And Chris goes, I just named the band. Seriously, not like, sorry, Chris. I mean, our drummer said, did I name him Chris in the, I wonder if I named him Chris in the article. No, I used his middle name. Anyway, so he's like, yeah, I just named the band, like sincerely. And then our guitarist just in his hands, just screams. And our singer looks at us, or he doesn't look at, he looks past like 1,000-yard Vietnam, like PTSD stare. He looks past us and he goes, he just kept naming terrible names. He's like, and then our drummer goes, my names are good. And he goes, and then our singer goes, he said vroom. And he goes, yeah. And we're like, what? Vroom? And he goes, yeah, like the sound a car makes. God. And there was a point where he thought vroom would be a legitimate. Jesus, goddamn Christ. He thought we were going to be famous. Name vroom. Good radio. All right, what else we got? That's a story behind that one. This band dedicated the next song to old school fans, so I guess I'll just go fuck myself then. That's less of a title and more of something I have said to myself 8,000 times at shows. Here's another one. I prefer small, intimate shows, so I only listen to shitty bands. That legit like came from I mentioned him already on this episode, Ryan Sweeney. He is all about listening to. He posted something on Facebook that was like, intimate shows are the best, so I only listen to bands from my city. And Ryan, you live in Durham, North Carolina. Suck a dick and an asshole because there's maybe a band that's half decent out of any city that small. So that's what I wrote. Man, that makes me sound like an asshole. Yeah, whatever. All right, so what else we got? Anything else have good stories? Hey, sweetie. Or no, you're Robbie. Oh, you're a guy. I swear my boy cat is like super homophobic. Like he won't let any men pet him because he's like so not into it. And then women, he's like, hey, maybe you're just the John Hamm of cats. Well, you're a fat guy. You put the ham in John Hamm. Yeah. And he hissed at me. Thanks a lot. Oh, here's a good one. Show review. I can't thank Anal Cunt enough for introducing me to 311. So that one did. So downside. I mean, it's extremely specific reference. This is one of the ones where I've had a lot of ones that did less than average as far as view. I don't know how views do, but shares or whatever. But a lot of the ones I've experienced that I've written that did less than an average. In the comments, there are less comments, obviously. But it's people who fucking love them a lot of the time. Some are just bombs, but some people just love them. And it's because the reason they didn't get spread that wide is because they're, can't spread wide, is because they're, like they're very specific. This is an extremely specific reference. And so the people who got it loved it. But most people don't, and that's cool. But here's the plus side. The bassist of 311 retweeted it and followed me. 311 has been my favorite band since childhood. Also, another downside, I posted it saying, this is an article I wrote about my favorite band. Let's make the joke being like, oh, get it? I don't actually like Anal Cunt. That's not my favorite band. My favorite band is 311. Everyone commented with the alternative, being like, that's so funny that you would joke about your favorite band being 311. Well, you suck. Apparently, so does my music taste. All right, what else is good? Danny Glover debuts rap career as Fatherly Gambino. That one, that was like weird because like I was listening to, I love Childish Gambino's record Camp, specifically the first 4 tracks and the last track, and I was just listening to it, and I was like, this never happens, by the way. It always happens from some idea that I had or some observation. But this one, I literally was like, I want to write a headline because I love this record. And I think Danny Glover, sorry, fucking myself up. Donald Glover is amazing. And when I saw him in that any Derek comedy, and not just Bro Rape, I know that's the big one, but when he played like a fake college radio DJ, I was a college radio DJ at the Sun, and I was like, oh my God, that's so perfect. And he did a handful of other sketches. And I was like, this guy's career is amazing. I think what this guy has done in comedy, music, television, sketch, just stand up. It's like the dude is untouchable. It's so awesome what he's made out of his career. And I really fucking love it. And I was like, I want to write something about him. And I pitched it while listening to the record. And it got accepted while listening to the record. And I got to write it, which is really cool. But he didn't retweet it. So, you know what? Fuck yourself. All right. So, almost done. I think, let's see. Okay, so let's do the last. This is my second biggest one. 53,500 Facebook shares, and then, you know, whatever it did on all the other social medias. MIT physicist almost gets pick out of acoustic guitar. I'm only mentioning that one because after I had the what's it called? After I had the Warped Tour one, I was like, well, it's my peak. And by the way, for anyone who knows my Reddit stand-up shot about me playing Magic, it went viral at one point. And then apparently it got posted on, it went the front page of Imagery twice in the last week with different people posting it, and which explains why the Opie and Anthony subreddit, which I lurk, by the way, like I lurk the shit. I follow all those comedians, I follow all that shit, and they trashed me. And when I saw it, I'm flipping through, just like lurking and reading all the comments like I always do. I see my dumbass picture on there, and I was like, well, it's just a matter of time before they attack me. Maybe I've arrived. God damn it. Why am I getting all the negatives of people seeing my comedy and none of the whatever? Why the fuck am I bitching? By the way, shut the fuck up, Eric. All right, listen. I'm saying listen to myself, not you. You're already listening. No, you're not listening. You've already stopped listening. Why would you stop listening to this? Am I done yet? Oh, that's what. So that Magic one that went viral, that came out 2 days before the Warped Tour article. In about 72 hours, I had probably the greatest like 3-day period as far as exposure to me in comedy that I'll ever have in my life. I don't foresee in those 2 days, it was multiple, like a couple million people. That's insane. I don't know if it's whatever. I'm sure there's some crossover between the two, but a couple million people were looking and ideally laughing at jokes I made. Like it's fucking insane. Like that's completely insane. And so I didn't expect. So since then I've been like, I'm playing on, you know, house money. I'm playing on casino money. I don't anticipate getting any better than that. So when this MIT one came out, obviously didn't do nearly as well as the other one, but the fact that it did that well was like, all right, sweet. I still got bullets in the chamber. Yeah. And now that I feel insecure because I told you all that, I should also say with stand-up, things are, let's just put it this way. Like bar shows and club shows, it's like a few months ago when I did my first couple headlining bar shows or first couple MCing club weekends, looking back on it, it feels like I brought a knife to a gunfight. I still did well and did better than a lot of people I've seen in the past. And I don't mean contemporaries or peers. I mean people like when I went as a fan before I did comedy and I would see an opener for like a headliner for a weekend or like the headliner of a random bar show when I was just going to local comedy shows. I did, you know, above average or better than what I saw as far as crowd reaction. That said, I still felt like it was like I had a knife at a gunfight. And recently, I feel like I'm packing bullets now. You know, like I feel like the jokes that I like, the stand-up is between stand-up shots and hard times, view-wise or exposure-wise, hands down. That's obviously, I mean, though that's where the majority of people are seeing shit of mine, which I'm really happy about. But as far as just like success rate on a consistent basis, it's been like stand-up has been really, really incredible, and I'm really hoping to keep getting these opportunities and keep bringing it when I'm given the opportunity. And yeah, I don't know how to end this at this point. Well, thank you for watching, listening. If you watched or listened, I wonder how long it's going to take me to post this. I wonder if I'm going to wake up tomorrow and be like, delete, you fucking moron. All right. Anyway, have a good night, guys. I love you.